Heidi once again, back from the launch pad to finish our last stitch skill, which is the chain stitch. Before we hop in with Rebecca, I am going to point out that the directions that Rachel Beyer gives in her booklet about how to do the chain stitch is a little bit different from the way that Rebecca does her chain stitch. But if you remember earlier on, Rebecca has mentioned that people who do embroidery have different ways of making these different stitches. So if the way that Rebecca's looks isn't quite your cup of tea, you can always take a closer look at Rachel Beyer's version here in the booklet and try that one out and see which one you prefer. There's no harm in giving something a try. So with that, we're going to hop into Rebecca's version of how to do a chain stitch. And I'm going to get started on my sampler and I'll see you on the other side.
Okay, we're down to our last stitch, which in some ways is the most challenging stitch, but may also be the simplest depending on your point of view. We are going to be learning the chain stitch. And the chain stitch, as I tie off the end of this piece, the chain stitch is something that I use all the time. And you can use it for straight lines. You can use it for curved lines. Pretty much anything where you need an outline, it's a great place to use it. I've also used it to fill in, a little more complicated, but still it's a great stitch, multi-purpose all over the place. So we've, to compare, we had the back stitch here, which is where we're doing single space stitches of roughly equal length, but they're just barely touching. Now the chain stitch goes back to starting at the base of a line. So we'll pull that through and we're going to make one little tiny grain of rice length stitch. And then the big difference with the chain stitch compared to every other stitch is that we're going to split this stitch. So we're going to come up in the middle of the previous stitch, not quite the middle, but because it's going to create a series of chain links. So we'll do that, pull it, and then come back and make another grain of rice. So it creates a slightly different aesthetic. I've done entire projects with just the chain stitch. I don't know why, it's just one of my favorites. Some people prefer the back stitch. I'm just a chain stitch person. And then just so we for sure get a good look at it, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can get a better look at what I'm doing. Doing these videos made me realize that I've not had a manicure since before the pandemic started. And we're going to split and continue on. And we're going to do this the entire length. I particularly like this stitch for doing curved lines. It's very forgiving. It looks nice and clear, creates a really nice thick line. It's just a highly functional stitch. And we're going to go right on up for the whole thing. One challenge that always happens is making sure you don't stitch through your excess fabric. At some point you will, everyone does. It's just a hazard of the job. And then once you get to the top, we're going to tie off the floss. I'm going to go ahead and finish up this second line, and then we will come back and talk about how to finish your project.
And there you have it, a finished, stitched sampler. Going over these again, you have your back stitch, your running stitch, lots more back stitch and running stitch. Here we have one of our chain stitches. Let's see if we get it to focus. Like I said, the way that Rachel Byer does it in the booklet is a little different. I think it gives it more of that dramatic chain look, but I found that Rebecca's instructions were a little bit easier for me to follow. The great thing about this sampler is we have one chain stitch attempt to do here, and we have another on the opposite side. Whoop, right there. And you are free to try one or the other, or you can do both. That's the beauty of a sampler, is that you get to sample the stitches and find the ones that fit your aesthetic and your ability. We have our threaded running stitch, our cross stitch, our fern stitch, which I think is probably one of my favorites, and then the star stitch. So now that you are done sewing up your sampler, doing the embroidery on it, we have one more video left to come. Take your time, finish up, get what you can done, and then join us again for the final video where Rebecca will show you one of the ways that you can finish your embroidered sampler. Once again, send us any questions to the Launchpad at digitalmaker@itpld.org. The email again is digitalmaker@itpld.org. And don't forget to send your comments, pictures of your process and progress as you go along. We love to see those. And you can tag us on social media with hashtag ITPLDmade. All of those again will be on the final slide, or one of the slides coming up in just a moment. Have fun with your making. Take your time, enjoy yourself, and just really lean into the process of finishing up your embroidered sampler. Have fun. Seriously. It should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be a stress. And if it is, then maybe put it down and give it some time and come back later to finish it. We're not in any hurry, and these videos will be up for quite some time. I look forward to seeing you in our final video.